All right, 4 minutes now after the hour. Let's talk about what this today is. We always talk about the first 100 days. What about the first 50 days? Because the president, even his biggest detractors have to admit, is accomplishing a ton of things. Also, the world is not slowing down with a myriad of challenges, which he was taking on over the weekend. Has an emissary dealing with Hamas in Gaza, has a letter he's sending out to Iran, which is pretty much an ultimatum. At the same time, a delegation to Saudi Arabia to try to bring peace with Ukraine and Russia. And then there's just the things that he's doing because it's an agenda. His agenda he wants to do, and that is change the direction of our economy, make us less of an import economy, and start making things here. There's a huge transition in our economic focus right now.
So Ainsley, there's a long list of what the president's been able to accomplish right now, starting with the slashing the billions in waste via DOGE. He declared a national emergency on the U.S.-Mexico border. I mean, if you just look at the border.
That's the biggest success.
It is just, I mean, you can't deny it, whether you love them or hate them, the border is secure right now. He sent troops to the border as well, and he released got the release of the dozens of the Israeli hostages.
Yeah, that is wonderful, seeing those images of them coming home and hugging their parents and their loved ones. Very emotional. Also, the expansion of oil and gas production in the United States, set tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China to bring business back here to America, signed executive order banning trans athletes from women's sports teams, and signed an executive order expanding access of IVF. Remember the Democrats said, oh, he's going to take away IVF rights? Well, no, he's expanding
Makes it more affordable.
Exactly. Changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, just to name a few.
Right. That last one caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
On that poster in the
it's kind of
Oval
cool.
Office.
Yes.
I hate to pivot from the talking point, but the men and women's sports. I am surprised that is still a story. We saw it over the weekend where the new senator from Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin, who gave the speech, could not say that men should not be involved with it. The president is winning. It's like an 80-20 issue, and she says leave it up to the locals, and he's dominating on that. I would say, as it relates to the two things that he's gaining more and more traction from, it is what he did at the border and this issue alone. There's still some stuff to fix with the economy, but those two issues have been winners.
Yeah, the whole tariff thing's got to be worked out. I think a little bit of a steady overhand, but the focus, I get it. Listen, we're going to start making things here. I thought Sean Fain over the weekend, who runs a major union that spoke out at the DNC.
Right.
Over the weekend, he said, I support what Trump's doing. And I go back to when Ross Perot sat on that stage with Al Gore and or had a debate on Larry King with Al Gore, who was vice president at the time. And Al Gore said, I talked to 5 Nobel laureates. I talked to every economy. So if you have NAFTA and these free trade, you're going to see millions of jobs come to America. Ross Perot sat there and he says, I remember being 23 years old. I watched it and he said, no, there's going to be a giant sucking sound of jobs leaving America. There was a job. That's how it happened, and it was underlined in the pandemic when it turns out we didn't make anything. We didn't make masks. Yeah, we didn't make anything. So what President Trump is doing is saying the incentives, the tariffs. I'm gradually changing the world to bring things back here. Could be short term. It could be painful, but that's the major restructuring we're witnessing, and the workers appreciate it. If not immediately, eventually.
Yeah.
It's long term.
Well, the first 50 days have been incredible. You saw that list. Those are just a few of the things that he's accomplished over the last 50 days. And everyone talks about the first 100 days. And we know that the media is just ready to pounce on him, drama. Right? So there's an article in the New York Times and some other networks saying that Elon Musk is clashing with the cabinet secretaries. You know, they're going to have disagreements, probably. But Elon's providing the numbers, saying from an economic standpoint, this is where we need to cut so that we can get our debt lower. And then the department heads are saying, hold on, you know, we're listening to you, Elon. We're trying to make cuts, but let us do it in our own terms. So they're having these discussions. They had a cabinet meeting on Thursday, and then these headlines come out that Elon and Marco Rubio are clashing, that Marco Rubio said 1,500 people took early retirement buyouts with the State Department. That would count as layoffs. So we've already cut 1,500 jobs. And they're saying that those two were clashing in the meeting. President Trump was asked about it over the weekend, and he said this is completely fake news. And he talked about how DOGE has been able to work with his team. This was Donald Trump on Air Force One yesterday. Listen.
Well, I don't think the tensions are high. Look, Elon's a very special person, and these cabinet people are special people. You know, these are very successful people, or they wouldn't have they've got, they've attained the highest heights of government, and I think they have a fantastic relationship to Elon. And DOGE has been incredible. Hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud and abuse has been already found. And that doesn't mean they don't have a little bit of an argument here and there about something, or maybe personal arguments. There's not too many contract arguments. Contracts have been found. This is much more than just personnel. We found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraudulent contracts, or very wasteful. But I think fraud. I think it's fraud.
I think you're right, Ainsley, about the media waiting for something to cause
Wanna find
division.
anything.
First of all, you got a cabinet that all have strong personalities. They're all successful in their right. And you have Elon Musk, who is the world's richest man, a smart guy. They're going to disagree on some things, and they're going to duke it out. And I think for the media, they want to create a distraction for this administration. I don't think it's going to work. And I think the president is right. I'm going to allow the cabinet members to do what they need to do. If they can't make the necessary cuts, then I'm going to send Elon in.
Thanks to the leadership of Senator John Thune, they got their cabinet secretaries in place in record time. They got it start now with the undersecretaries and the ambassadors, especially in Israel. But it actually happened. There was an explosive meeting behind closed doors. Elon went after Marco Rubio directly. Rubio took it, then fired back. It also clashed with Sean Duffy. Sean's like, what are you doing in my department? You can't cut air traffic controllers. And he said, I'm not. He goes, no, you're not, but your people are. Can't do that. This is, to me, as healthy as it gets.
Yes.
Trump watched the whole thing, by all reports, watched the whole thing going on and go, okay, enough. Here's what we're doing. Cabinet secretaries will handle personnel. But you have to check in every 2 weeks. And if you're not doing it, you're going to have to deal with DOGE, who's going to deal with me. So we have a system in place. Anybody who goes through any moment in history where you just want to open up a book and get a perspective on what Reagan did or Woodrow Wilson did, you find out about all these clashes.
That's right.
It doesn't mean either side is wrong. It means different opinions about doing things with one objective, making successful. And if you are an egomaniac doing it for the wrong reasons, those are the ones who are short-lived. To me, I love the way this came out because they all have the same objective.
That's right.
It's the methods. And they just going to go on to a different system. President showed great leadership. Let these guys fight it out in front of you, see their perspective. And that's when you find out who's got the stronger argument.
That's right.
When you begin to melt. Other cabinet secretaries didn't.
Elon and Marco Rubio were dining with the president together at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday, and Elon Musk is going to be on Larry Kudlow's show on Fox Business today at 4 p.m. I'm sure Larry will ask him about this, and we'll hear what he has to say.
Can I just say that I know this may be shocking to some because the last 4 years you have scripted cabinet meetings.
Nothing.
And then they're like asking questions. You have to submit your questions to the cabinet before everything was done with PowerPoint. We're back to doing business like it should be done. That means there's going to be some spirited debate with the leaders of the country.
I don't think Elon wants any sympathy, but in listening to, it takes forever to get through a Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah.
It's like 3 hours. But I got to the point yesterday when they were talking about the death threats he's under. So he says not only did 2 people get captured going to get him before he was even a Trump supporter, but he says since that time the death threats are just flowing in. And then you see in New York City, the Tesla showroom. You're trying to sell a car for a living. In New York City, probably a lucrative thing. An electric car, chanting, "We want clean air." Right? You idiots, it's an electric car. And then you go in and start being ripped out. So now I want to go buy a Tesla car, but I don't want to get involved in all the turmoil. Europeans have stopped buying Teslas. The stock's taking a pounding. Please tell me how Elon's doing anything but trying to help the government.